John Fredericks, America's Godzilla of Truth. He's popular and proficient in picking politics. John Fredericks, America's Godzilla of Truth. John Fredericks, America's Godzilla of Truth. He's popular and proficient in picking politics with prophetic.
Good evening and welcome to a special edition of the Godzilla Wins Saturday pick show, now on Tuesday for March Madness. The War Room Battleground with Steve Bannon is being preempted for our special edition here of the Godzilla Wins Saturday pick show for March Madness. You can hear War Room Battleground in its entirety from 6 to 7 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow morning. So if you want to check that out, please keep that in mind. I am your host for this special edition of Godzilla Wins March Madness, Jack Fredericks, alongside my father, the Godzilla of Truth, the Oracle of Deplorables, John Fredericks, senior contributors, Nate Perry and Dan Angel as well. Everyone joining us, super excited for this March Madness show. We're gonna do mostly topics today, give you our final four picks, just a whole bunch of different things going on after the bombshells from the Selection Sunday Committee. A lot of drama, a lot of I guess adversity for some teams. Some people left out, like Rick Petito's St. John's, and also Seton Hall was left out. So we'll talk about all of that here, and then we'll give our final four picks. For all of your picks and predictions, go to GodzillaWins.com. That's GodzillaWins.com. And you can check out all of the expert picks and predictions for March Madness. Right now, we're doing an expert pick for every single first round game. We're also going to be doing a special edition of the Godzilla Wins show tomorrow, where we pick against the spread and the over-under for every single game on the first round. That'll just be a podcast. It won't be live on the radio. So you can check that out on Godzilla Wins as well. As with everything, Godzilla Wins and its subsidiaries are for entertainment purposes only. If you have a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER, 1-800-426-2537 in Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Michigan, Nebraska, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Call 800-327-5050 or visit gamblinghelpline-ma.org. In Massachusetts, call 877-G-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. In New York, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. In Arizona, 1-800-522-4700. Kansas, New Hampshire, 887-889-7777, or visit ccpg.org. In Connecticut, 100 bets off in Iowa, or visit opgr.org in Oregon. Before we get to some of the major events and topics, I guess I'll say hi to everyone on the show here. Dad, Dan, how you doing?
Good, super.
Good.
Better from the Big East.
Yeah, glad you guys could join us today. Now, I want to talk right before we get to this show, about a new product that I've been trying. Royal Canal Fitness's RC Furnace. This is a vitamin capsule that allows you to burn fat while you work out. Now, here's the bottle. Comes in these almost just like a vitamin capsule. I've been trying these out lately. They are for fat burning purposes for the most part. They act kind of as a pre-workout. And what I love about these is not only the little caffeine jolt that they give me, which is pretty great. I mean, a lot of times for me, when I go to the gym, I lift late at night. So when I'm working out late at night, it's nice to have a little bit of a caffeine jolt, not too much, but a little bit. I also love the fact that these have a lot of vitamin Bs and a lot of folic acid. The folic acid is really nice because it supports the blood flow, and that's what they mean kind of by the fat burning part of the capsule is the folic acid. What happens with the folic acid is it stimulates your blood flow into your muscles and gets rid of some of that fat and gives you a nice little workout. So what I need everyone to do, if you're interested, if you work out, if you are interested in trying something that for me has really taken my workout over the top, this is available at royalcanal.fit. That's royalcanal.fit. Promo code Godzilla wins. So just like Godzilla wins, promo code Godzilla wins to subscribe. You can get 50% off your first bottle and 3 for the price of 2 after that, with free shipping on all your orders. royalcanal.fit and Godzilla wins is the promo code there. So go ahead and check it out and try these guys. All right, we are here talking some March Madness. I'm pumped. I know you guys are too. We're all super excited here.
Very excited.
Yeah, I'm glad we could get together and do this show. We've got a whole bunch of picks going on the website. The Selection Sunday was really, not every Selection Sunday, I guess, is as dramatic as this one. Dan, Nate, Dad, you guys have been following this stuff for a long time, so you know that sometimes it's a lot of chalk. It's like, oh, we knew this was going to go here. We knew this was going to go here. Bracketology is so advanced now that we can pretty much determine, not exclusively, but a lot with some precision, where these seedings are going to shake out. But this year, because of a whole bunch of different factors, we got a lot of surprises. And one of the big surprises, Dan, and we'll start with you here, is the Big East. The Big East had 3 teams that were selected. I believe it's 3. I think they had 7 that were like on the bubble. So they had a lot of bubble teams, not a lot of locks. That's where the 3 came in. UConn won the conference tournament, so it's not like a team that was on the bubble punched their ticket by winning the tournament. And so a conference that is usually very strong, and it is a strong conference, they get 3 teams, while the Mountain West gets 6 teams. Now, there's some conspiracy theories that because it's on Fox News or it's on Fox Sports for some reason, the Mountain West is on Fox Sports, and the CBS is not airing March Madness, and they're on Big East. I don't know if we can buy into any of those conspiracy theories, but Dan, we'll start with you.
Yes, they're all true.
Okay, well,
yes.
I figured Dad might jump into some of those conspiracies.
There's no conspiracies, but there's no coincidences. That's all true. If you follow college basketball, all the power teams are in the Big East. Sorry, Mountain West. Sorry, Hawaii. Sorry, pack this and pack that.
Hawaii doesn't play in the Mountain West, John.
They got whatever it is. They got
Hawaii
all the best
Big West.
This was a total screw job against Big East, against Northeast teams. I've never seen in my life anything like this in my life. Like, all these teams should be in the NCAA dance or get a playing game or something. Fact that you had Seton Hall not in. Are you kidding me? The Pirates are one of the best teams. They play in a monster conference. Then you got Pittsburgh. They got 22 wins. What the hell happened to them? Pittsburgh is one of the best teams in the East. Then you got St. John's. They only got snubbed because they hate Pitino, right? That's the reason they got snubbed. So now they're snubbing coaches. This thing has got to be the biggest joke. The whole thing has got to get revamped. They got to get new people making these selections. The Big East got royally screwed up the wazoo. It's all conspiracy and it's all bias, and it's outrageous. And it's tainting. It's going to taint the whole thing. It's going to taint it. Like, I want to see Nick Pitino coaching on the sidelines, right? He deserves to be there. I live in Pittsburgh. Are you calling me? Pittsburgh's got 22 wins. You're not going to pick him for the tournament? Are you kidding me? You got half these teams out there playing nobody. Who the hell is a Butler playing? Nobody, right? It's a joke.
Butler's in the Big East.
Yeah. Butler's not in the tournament either. Your face looks almost sunburned, which is pretty impressive given your usual ruddy complexion. So you must be pretty fired up about this. We have to remind our audience. We need to remind our audience that John Fredericks is, among other things, from New Jersey, Big East territory out there, and so that might be painting his perspective a little bit. Dan, I'll ask the same question to you that Dad jumped in there and really got us going with: did the Big East get screwed?
No, quite frankly, no. You look at Seton Hall. Who did they beat? They had one really good win against Connecticut. Okay, great. But you look at this non-conference schedule. Lost to USC on a neutral court, lost to Iowa on a neutral court, lost to Rutgers at home. Like, their best win out of conference was Missouri, who went 0-18 in the SEC, who beat Pittsburgh, which is why the Panthers aren't in. Pitt played one of the worst non-conference schedules and managed to lose to a Missouri team that went 0-18 in the SEC, and then lost its first round game in the SEC tournament. So I'm sorry, I don't have any sympathy for these teams. And if conspiracies were a thing, St. John's would have been in for sure. I mean, Pitino coaching yet another school into the tournament, that would be a huge story. Like, they would want Pitino on the sidelines, not at home. So if conspiracy meant anything, St. John's would have definitely been on the right side of the bubble. And then Providence just lives on the bubble. Like, if the Friars aren't on the bubble, something has gone seriously wrong. But the Big East's biggest problem, and it's twofold, Georgetown and DePaul. Those two teams are the worst Power 6 teams in the nation by a pretty good margin, and that's where a lot of these wins come from. I mean, when you're beating up on quad 4 opponents in conference 4 times, 5 times if you get one of them in the conference tournament, that's not going to do anything but drag your numbers down. So you've got to make up for that by scheduling tough out of conference. These 3 teams didn't do it. Pittsburgh certainly didn't do it. So the one school that I really have sympathy for is Indiana State. Indiana State belongs in this field, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I mean, the Sycamores, like, what can you do? You go 31-3 and you have one bad night against a good Drake team, and it all ends in ashes. So, I mean, I think Virginia does not belong in this tournament. I think Michigan State does not belong in this tournament. I honestly would put Pittsburgh in along with Indiana State. But again, Pittsburgh did not play anybody out of conference. And their one quote-unquote glamour game was against Missouri, who proved to be complete garbage in the SEC, and Pitt lost that game.
Let's
and
talk.
While I'm on that train,
Well, they didn't even put in Creighton. Here's what
Creighton's in the tournament. What are you talking about? Creighton's a 3.
City Series, Pitt hasn't been playing Duquesne. That game needs to be back on the schedule at the Penguins Arena, and that would have really helped Pittsburgh's numbers.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
definitely.
So look. So Creighton's in the tournament. They're a 3 seed. The 3 are UConn, Marquette, and Creighton. Those are your 3 Big East teams. Dan brings up an interesting
but
point.
McDermott was saying the other teams got screwed. That was a point that I was making. Coach McDermott.
What's he going to say, John?
He twittered out. He said it's kind of taking a little buzz off. If you win half your games in a Big East, you ought to be playing in a postseason. And he's right.
Well, sure,
What
but
is
I mean,
McDermott really going to say?
yeah,
Our conference sucks. We don't deserve a 3 seed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. Like nobody should watch us play. Like we're terrible.
yeah, like he coaches in the Big East. I mean, everybody in the SEC, if the SEC got screwed, would do the same thing. If you coach in that conference, you have to be like, yeah, this is these are the greatest coaches in the history of basketball. These minds, when put together, are some of the greatest minds you've ever seen. I mean, that's what they have to do. That's just what they do. So, I mean, Dan or Nate, what I kind of want to bring into the conversation, something Dan mentioned, which is the idea of quad 1 wins. And there's teams like, for instance, we talk about Pittsburgh, maybe they didn't have enough quad 1 wins. Talk about Seton Hall, nothing good on the resume outside of the Big East. Okay, I agree with Dan. Pitt, I mean, they kind of got screwed, but that happens. Nevada, on the other hand, 6 quad 1 wins. They got an at-large bid. They didn't win the Mountain West. And we learned, even though a lot of people think maybe New Mexico should have been an at-large bid anyway, we learned from the committee that they were in the tournament because they won the Mountain West. So you look at a team like Nevada, which maybe plays in a conference, even though the Mountain West is a good conference, not as strong or not as many names as the Big East, but has all those quad 1 wins. Is that something that really needs to be like looked at? I mean, is this like, how important is resume at this point in the year?
I mean, it's really important, and it's something that conferences have been thinking about for a while. It's been something that the Big 12 has done, where they just kind of play generally a fairly soft out of conference schedule, and then they just play each other, and their numbers are pretty good, and they're sort of artificially inflated from beating up on bad teams early in the season, and then it just sort of carries over. Conferences do that, like they talk about it, like it's pretty open that they try and manipulate their net rankings in that way. But I mean, it's certainly like what it looks like. I mean, when you look at just like quad 1 wins, it doesn't even matter. Like Nevada was 6-6 in quad 1 games. It wasn't like they were just crushing every good opponent they played, but they just had some wins. And that's all you really needed to do, was just beat some good teams sometimes.
My perspective here, and then we'll move on and we'll talk about UConn, Dad, which we'll give you the floor for that since you're.
I don't want to move on.
I know you don't.
Why?
I'll say this about
Tell
the
me
Big
why
East.
a mid-major Why is a mid-major? What is it? Mountain West? The hell they get six teams in there? They like play each other. I mean, the bias against the Big East against Eastern teams is so egregious. The
This
whole
has to be
thing,
the
the
first
whole
time anyone has
selection
ever
thing has
said
got
there's
to
a
get
bias
stopped.
against East
And
versus
this
East.
has tainted the whole NCAA tournament because there ought to be six. Why is there six Mountain West teams in there? Or Pac Mountain or whatever.
I would suspect, and I would argue that the Big East struggled because the top 3 teams are so good and they were so dominant. And Dan kind of touched on it a little bit, and I think that it's true. You know, like it's if everyone's going to lose to those top 3 teams like pretty repeatedly, it creates this like very clear hierarchy. In the Mountain West, everyone beat everyone on any given day. Like the top 6 teams in the Mountain West just traded victories. So by the end, it was so convoluted that I think it was a little bit harder to pull out who was better. So they just let them all in.
Off the top of my head, I'm going to name the 5 teams that earned a bid according to the selections committee because they won their conference tournament. NC State in the ACC, New Mexico in the Mountain West. Now I'm blanking on the other 3. Who won? Though the Big Ten was Illinois. So then the Oregon in the Pac-12. So there's 3. Yep. Then there's like 2 more. Was it Drake? Maybe
I mean, the winner of the Missouri
knocked out
Valley
Indiana
was probably
State
either way.
Yeah, there's 2 more that I'm forgetting. I'd have to look at the bracket. UAB, that's right. What's the 5th one?
Yep.
Do you remember, Dan?
So did you say NC State?
I said NC State. There's
Duquesne.
Duquesne. Okay, which Duquesne is an 11 seed. You know, that's kind of iffy too. They're probably should be a little lower. But Dad, my argument here would be those are 5 teams that were not going to be an at-large bid, that were not going to get a bid into the tournament, that received an auto bid because they won their conference tournament. That knocks out 5 Big East teams who were on the bubble. Now, would 5 Big East teams have made the tournament? No, but Seton Hall probably would have. St. John's probably would have.
St. John's should have.
You know, Pitt, a couple of these teams in the Big East and some other more deserving teams probably would have been in the tournament had we not had basically a just upheaval in the conference tournaments there, where these teams like NC State going on this crazy run, Duquesne. I mean, some of these teams that really, Oregon, which was not on anyone's list, now they earn the tournament. This is like March Madness starts during the conference tournament. That's why it's so exciting, because during the conference tournament you get things like Duke gets upset, Tennessee gets upset. You know, the only team that looked really dominant was UConn. I know Houston got blown out by Iowa State. They were a little banged up in that game. I don't know if that's completely going to be an issue in the tournament, but it could be. So, you know, Dad, I mean, I think my point would be that if you're the only way to punch your ticket is to have either an incredible resume like Creighton, Marquette, or to win the conference. They had too many teams on the bubble, and we just had a bunch of madness on Saturday and Sunday, and so they're left out. I don't think it's a crime or anything like that, or a conspiracy. Now, one thing that I will say that I know,
Jack, you know something? It's interesting you bring up Creighton there, because John's been railing against the Mountain West and saying how it's biased against the Big East. I got a number to throw out, and that is the fact that Colorado State, who is going to be playing in a first 4 game out of the Mountain West, smacked Creighton by 21 on a neutral court.
There you go. And yeah, they're in the play-in game, which I think, I mean, that's, is it Colorado State and Virginia?
Virginia.
Yes, it's Colorado State, Virginia. Sponsored by Ambien.
That's going to be an exciting game. Oh, wow. Let's see. I can get a cup of coffee. I can get a beer. I can eat. I can have a sandwich, and then somebody will score a basket. Then I can go back, work out. Somebody will score another basket. Yeah, it's going to be exciting.
First 1 to 40 wins.
Unbelievable. This is like this whole thing's a joke. You know what?
Who the hell
watches? Who the hell watches?
Yeah. Like, what are you talking about?
Okay, good point.
Like,
you're not watching the game. You didn't have to go that far in.
Yeah, really. Like, I mean, the shot clock's only 30 seconds. What are you just
I do 50 push-ups a day, though. That's about. But I only did 45 today. But the other thing. Like, who watches Mountain West basketball? Do you like stay up? Oh, there's a Mountain West basketball game on tonight. All the basketball you watch, because you live in Reno, which is the other end of the earth. Nobody watches. Oh, let's stay up and see the Mountain West basketball game Tuesday at 10. Like I'm
You're-
watching Big East games, baby. I'm watching
Yeah.
Seton
I
Hall
love
Pirates.
watching the Mountain West. It's good
Who the
basketball.
hell watches that?
Yeah, you just go to bed at 7 because you have to get up
Yeah.
at 3, so you miss all the games. You can't watch the Mountain West games. Now, Dad, one thing that
Defensive East Coast bias.
your East Coast
Oh,
bias.
totally.
One of the reasons, Dad, that you're able to though to get up so early, even though you got to go to bed so early as well, is because of Healthy Cell. Tell us a little bit about how REM sleep helps you wake up fresh as the days. I know you're going to take it as soon as the show's done with.
Yeah, I mean it's already 6:20 at night. I'm getting ready to go. So I try to get down at 8:30, 8:30. I got to get with 3:45 or 4. So you got to get at least 7 hours by the time you fall asleep. But about 8:15, I take my REM sleep. 15 minutes, 8:30, I'm out, and I got to get up. I got to get up at 7 hours when I'm not traveling. When I'm traveling, it's worse because you got events at night. But this REM sleep has changed my life. It really has. Even now, look at me. I got up at 3:45 today. I did 50 push-ups. I went to work. I did my show. Then I did a pre-tape with somebody at noon. Then I got to run the company. Then I come here. Then somebody hits my mirror on the way home, knocks it off. I got to get his plate, call into the insurance company. And look, I'm still fresh and energetic as ever. Why? And I'm here defending the Big East because nobody watches Mountain West games. Why? Because they take REM sleep. Go to healthycell.com/Godzilla to get your REM sleep. First order, 20% off. You got to jump out of bed. You're going to be fresh as a daisy. It's going to change your life. Healthy, all natural. Got to get that regenerative sleep. Joe takes it. Jack takes it. Claire takes it. Ann takes it. Half that baseball team in West Virginia, I turn them onto it. They're taking it. Nate should take it if I ever get around to sending him some. But I tell you what, it's the best thing you can do for yourself and your body. REM sleep, healthycell.com/Godzilla. Promo code Godzilla, 20% off your first order. You can thank me tomorrow.
20% off. Now, you're listening to the Godzilla Wins Tuesday now, March Madness special. We'll call it that. Godzilla Wins March Madness special. I'm here with John Fredericks and senior contributors Nate Perry and Dan Angel. Go to GodzillaWins.com for all of your sports predictions and picks. We got all sorts of coverage on March Madness, so you go there right now and you'll see a whole bunch of picks. Dan, so the next thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was just basically if UConn could repeat, but I'm going to reframe that question and we'll kind of go around the horn. Let's just say this. Which one of the number one seeds has the best chance of winning it all? Let's just open it up a little bit so we're not just talking about UConn. We got UConn, Houston, Purdue, which I know you love, Dan, and then UNC. So we'll go around the horn. Which number one seed do you think has the best chance of going all the way?
Boiler up. I mean, I honestly think Purdue is the best team and has a very reasonable road. I mean, you look at who is in that region. Tennessee is the number 2 seed. I saw that game in person in Honolulu. Purdue is not going to be afraid of Tennessee. They've already shown that they can win that game. Gonzaga, I mean, Purdue has already shown that they can win that game. Kansas is probably highly overseeded as a number 4. So, I mean, you look through this regional, and I think Purdue has a very reasonable path. I mean, getting to start in Indianapolis is going to be nice. Detroit is not all that far away. I think that Purdue has the best path to Phoenix. Once they get there, it might get a little dicey given that they're likely going to have to go through Houston before they get to the title game. But I really think that Purdue has the best chance to finally exercise those demons and win it all.
Purdue famously bounced last year by three-point shooting maniacs in Fairleigh Dickinson. They have added a lot more depth to their guard position and can shoot just better threes. I mean, that was a part of their game that was missing last year. They're much better at the three-point line. They play in the Big Ten, of course. And Nate, one of the things that we always talk about with brackets is it's not just who's the best number one. It's, like Dan said, who has the easiest path, the path of least resistance. We saw Tennessee lay an egg against Mississippi State. Although if Dalton Connect is playing like he can, they can beat anybody. Creighton is a tough team. Shout out to the Big East. Shout out to Dad. We love Creighton. But, they got to get past Tennessee as well. You got Kansas, who I agree with Dan, overseeded. They kind of suck. I think McNeese is a live dog. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So I'm not so sure about Gonzaga. So Purdue, pretty easy path there, considering I think UConn has a much harder path in some other teams as well. But Nate, of the number ones, I mean, do you think it's Purdue, or are you going to go with your guys in Houston?
I'm going to go with my guys in Houston. I mean, it looks very reasonable to me. Duke is a pretty soft 4 seed if they make it through that first weekend. Wisconsin, James Madison could upset them. Facing James Madison the second weekend would be nice too. So there's just not a lot like in the early going, the first couple games for Houston that like are that concerning for me. So that's sort of where my head goes. I mean, and I think, for my money, I think that Houston has like the sort of safest profile for a long lasting like tournament run. Defense tends to be more reliable than offense. Strong defensive teams typically perform well in the tournament. So that's sort of where my head goes with it. I mean, I think that UConn's got the toughest path. I think the UConn's, if they're not the best team in the country, they're, 1A. But I mean, the committee didn't do them any favors. I mean, FAU could be a tough out. Auburn is woefully underseeded at 4. Ken Palm has them at 4th in the country. Most efficiency metrics have them better than a 4 seed. So there's no walkovers there from the jump for UConn really. So that's sort of, I think it's either Purdue or Houston. I just think Houston is a better team.
The East region, and Dad, we'll get to you here in a minute because I think you might like UConn, but I might just be guessing. The East region is interesting. San Diego State and FAU, not the same team as last year, but 2 Final Four teams. Auburn, definitely an underseeded 4 seed. One of the best teams in the country, can come out of the East, no problem. BYU is a difficult team as well. Has a pretty solid squad there. And then Iowa State, which has a top 20 defense, not a great offense, but they can be disruptive. We saw that with Houston in the conference tournament. Like Iowa State can beat anybody on any given night if their defense holds up. They can frustrate any offense. So for the best team in the country, which we talked about on Saturday, they're supposed to have the easiest route. And if you look at the East, a lot of people think this is probably the most difficult route to get to the Final Four. Now, once you get to the Final Four, all bets are off, as Dan said. Dad, what do you think? Easiest path? Who's your number one?
North Carolina. I think the Tar Heels have the easiest path here, without a doubt. I mean, I'm not really a believer in Baylor. I mean, Arizona has never really scared me. So if you're looking for the easiest path to get certainly to the Final Four, I think it's North Carolina. I'm not picking UConn because I think the most dangerous team in this entire field is Iowa State, because you don't know what they're going to do. I mean, the disruption that they cause. If you watch that Houston game on Saturday night, which I saw in Morgantown, I mean, the Cougars were never in that game. I mean, they could not. They get a really good coach. They couldn't figure this team out, and they throw different defensive schemes at you. They're big, they're athletic, they're fast. They got the whole thing going, and yes, they don't score a lot, but when you got that kind of a disruption, it kind of reminds me of the old VCU Rams, right, where they had the chaos thing going on. You never really knew what you were going to do, right? And so same thing with Paul Westhead when he was with Loyola of Chicago. I mean, people were afraid to play them because you never knew. Yeah, Marymount, you never knew what the hell you were going to get. And so thank you, Dan, for being the editor here. I kind of remember the teams in general. But so thank you for correcting me. I really appreciate it. So I don't have to, dig down that deep.
Dad, you remember the feeling, like you remember how it felt to be there and to watch the clock hit 0. Dan remembers all the important details.
I remember Paul Westhead getting to the Elite 8 with a team that they thought would get beat in the first round, and he had that he had that disruptive go 100% press system offense that they just couldn't figure out, and he outran everybody. And so you get these kind of teams that come in like, what the hell is this? Or you get Fairleigh Dickinson last season that lit up the 3 trade. You get this kind of stuff going on. That's where I think Iowa State is. So I'm not going to bet UConn to get to the finals only because I'm afraid of Iowa State. But if your question is who do I think has got the easiest path to get there, North Carolina.
It's interesting that you say that because a lot of people have Arizona in their Final Four, the number 2 seed down there. Dan, how live is Arizona? Because I look at them from a statistics standpoint, sure, but I just don't know if I believe that they can put together a run and get to the Final Four. I've seen them fall short a lot.
Well, yeah, Arizona is basically high risk, high reward because the Wildcats can certainly beat anybody, but if they get pulled into a slowdown game, as Washington State did to them twice, they're in real trouble. That was exactly what happened to this team last year against Princeton. Princeton, famous for slowing the tempo down, and Arizona couldn't handle it. So Arizona has to get the right opponent if they're going to make a run. If they're able to run and shoot the way they normally do, then they're going to last for quite a while. If they run into a team that can really gum up the works, which can certainly happen against some of these teams. If they play Alabama in the regional final, then it's off to the races and Arizona's going to cruise in that game. But if they play the likes of St. Mary's, then that's not going to work because Arizona just does not know how to play a slow-down game. And if you can force the Wildcats to take that extra time for a shot, they kind of fall to pieces. So Arizona could make a run to the Final Four. They could just as easily be gone in the first weekend.
And that's what we talk about all the time with disruption. Nate mentioned this a couple weeks in the show. Teams that can slow the pace down are big disruptors, but also teams that can really speed it up and hit a lot of threes. It's not just speeding up the pace. You got to be able to hit threes if you're going to be disruptor, especially if you're a lower seeded team as well. So we'll see. I guess for parity's sake, I'll go with UConn as my pick for the number 1, even though they have the hardest path. I think they could lose to any of these teams: San Diego State, Auburn, BYU. I think they could lose to Iowa State. There's a lot of teams that UConn could lose to. However, I do think that they're the best team in the country. I think Donovan Clingan's pretty much I think he moves a little bit better than Zach Edey, although Zach Edey is a little bit more physical. And so I'm kind of just cheering to watch Donovan Clingan, the big 7-footer, do his thing. And not only that, another reason I like UConn is they don't have to travel almost at all to play any of these games. They play all these games like in the New York area because they're in the East. So,
but is that an advantage for Connecticut? Because you look at UConn's history, and out of their 5 championships, 4 of them they came out of the West Regional. They've only managed to make the Final Four once coming out of the East. The other 5 have all been coming out of the West.
That's interesting. I don't know. I guess
it's probably one of those historical things that doesn't mean anything, but it is an interesting point.
You never know. The general assumption though is, if UConn can play Madison Square Garden, they're going to have a lot of fans there, and they should be okay. But
sure.
You never know. It's a hard place. It's a hard region to come out of. But if anyone can do it, I think it'd be UConn. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the biggest frauds and best live dogs. The 2 things I want to talk about here. So what I mean by biggest frauds, it doesn't necessarily have to be a high seed, but I think that's kind of what I'm going for. Just 2 or 3 teams, or 1 team maybe, that you think this team can lose in the first round. This team is way overseeded. There's a couple of them I think that we can talk about. And then just your favorite dogs. Those Nate and I were talking about this earlier. If you're just picking in your bracket, if you're just picking the favorites, you're not having any fun with this. There's going to be upsets. Find some and have some fun and cheer for the little guys. So, Dan, we'll start with you, then we'll go to Nate and Dad. Biggest frauds. We'll start with biggest frauds. We'll do that, and then we'll circle back around to best live dogs.
Okay. So, do I go with the most obvious name here? Because it's got to be Kansas. The Jayhawks have absolutely no business being on the 4 line with how they've played all year. Kansas has been dynamite as always at Allen Fieldhouse, and they've handled the state of Oklahoma very well. They've won in both Norman and Stillwater. But other than that, this team was a mess. They went 2-7 I believe 2-7 against the spread on the road in the Big 12. They got whacked by a Cincinnati team that was nowhere close to making the field. They lost by 30 to Houston, and if they don't have Hunter Dickinson healthy, Samford's going to beat them. So I really don't know what in the world the committee was doing putting them at 4. I think Dayton might be a little bit overseeded at 7. I did have the Flyers safely in the field, but I think Dayton is probably in trouble against Nevada. And Duquesne, the committee clearly did not put any thought whatsoever into their seed, because I'm 99% sure that the committee just decided, okay, A10 winner, 11 seed, done with it. Because Duquesne's metrics look more like a 13, which actually works because BYU's metrics look more like a 4. The Cougars are only on the 6 line because all of the 4 seeds were in Friday, Sunday regionals, and BYU refuses to play on Sunday, so they had to go to a Thursday, Saturday site. So that knocked them down to a 6. Because you look at the seed line, and BYU is some seeded 17th overall, which would have them as a 5. But because of that Sunday rule, they got knocked down to a 6. So that could be a really interesting live dog if you're looking for someone to advance a couple rounds, because I think they've got a good matchup against Illinois. But the dog that I really like has got to be Oregon. I think South Carolina is overseeded, and I think Oregon has the potential to win not 1 but 2 games, because that second match with Creighton, Dana Altman against his old school, I really like the Ducks there.
So Dan likes the Ducks as a live dog. He's got a couple frauds. Nate, we'll turn to you now, and then Dad will get to you as well with some of these frauds. Just a couple teams or one team that you think like this team is going to lose.
I mean, Dan said it, but I'll just say it again just for emphasis. Like, Kansas will lose early. Might not be to Samford, but they will lose to someone like early. Like, they're just not a good team. They're injured, and they're just not deep enough to be able to overcome it. McCullough's been out with a knee injury. Dickinson dislocated his shoulder at the end of the regular season. Neither of them has played since. There's no real indication of how healthy either of them are heading into this. Kansas got in as a 4 seed, but that's not what this current team is. Like, they got in based on the strength of their record, not like the current product they're bringing to the court. The other ones that I'm just sort of skeptical of, and this is maybe just, West Coast stuff. I'm not really convinced that the West Coast Conference teams, St. Mary's and Gonzaga, are any good. The WCC is just like such a disaster of a conference anyways, and there's so many soft spots for them to just beat up on bad teams. That, like, just being the 2 decent teams out of it, I'm just not convinced that either of them, are poised to make a deep run like Gonzaga has in the past. So those are sort of the initial ones that I look at and think, like, these teams are vulnerable to losing, like, right away, like from the jump.
One live dog.
Live dog, McNeese State. I mean, we talk about teams that play weird.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's like 31 wins.
Yeah, I mean, they come at you in a weird way. They go like 9 deep. They hit you in waves, tons of pressure. They can play an uncomfortable game for a lot of teams, and it could be an uncomfortable game for Gonzaga.
Okay, so McNeese, live dog, Oregon, live dog. That's actually – the Oregon one's interesting. I hadn't really thought about Oregon much. I mean, I haven't given them much thought, Dan, because they just got the auto blood. I figure, never know. But those teams are hot. Dad – start with your frauds. I mean, you're like Captain Fraudster, so I know you got like 16 frauds over here.
Well, I'm going to go at the top. I'm going to go at the top fraud is Duke. I mean, this team is like you go to the ice cream parlor and order a softie, right? The thing melts and the ice cream cone is all over your hand. You throw it out. It's basically what Duke is. I mean, this is not a physical team. Hey, go play a Big East team. See how that works out for you, right? Duke, total fraud. Number 4, all because of who they are. This team is soft. They're weak. They don't have this. They don't even have the mental toughness. I don't know who they open up against. What, Vermont? I don't even know what the line is.
Vermont's good.
I'm gonna bet Vermont. I'm gonna bet for Vermont. I'm gonna take the points with Vermont. So I think Duke is the biggest fraud here. I got to tell you the other fraud, guys, and I know you guys are going to get upset with me. Houston. I'm telling you, man, they went to Kansas, start the Big Ten. They got blown out. Just got blown up by Iowa State. There's something about this team. They look great on paper. They look at number 1 seed. I wouldn't bet crap on this team. And, like, I like the Cougars, and obviously I'm an Astro fan. I got my hat on. But something about this team I don't like. And so I think they're the second biggest number one fraud. Now they got to be the number one seed because of their record. They beat everybody, but you look at a couple of very good teams they played. They went to Kansas, they got blown out. Okay, they went at home, then they played Kansas, they blew them out. Fine. But the Iowa State game, Iowa State exposed. I know they were banged up, exposed a lot of weaknesses. They got Duke and the Cougars as frauds. Here's a team I like. Here's my upset special. This UAB team. This team. These guys. These smoking dragons or flaming whatever that. By the way, two best logos in collegiate athletics: UAB Dragons and the Delaware Blue Hens, Fighting Blue Hens. Two best logos. I love their logo. But they're playing San Diego State. They're number 12 seed, I think. I think they win that whole game. I love UAB there. I love the Dragons. So that's number one. Other team you really got to watch here, guys, is Drake, because they just play solid basketball. That program, it's very disciplined. They got good shooters. They can shoot threes. They always play competitive defense. That is a very well-disciplined, very well-coached team. They're coming in at a 10 here, Drake is, against Iowa, against who are they? Who are they playing? Washington State, right? Washington State. So I'm going to take Drake in this game. That's my two upset specials. Drake and UAB, and my two frauds are Cougars and Duke. Duke, though, the biggest fraud.
Care to respond? 30 seconds. I'll give you the debate form.
I mean, they should be one seed. Like, there's nobody like that really takes it seriously, that looks at metrics, that thinks that Houston's like not a top 14. I just think they get beat. They're first in BPI. I mean, any sort of metric has them first or second. Like, they're not a fraud one seed.
So, yeah. So, I will give you one fraud, and then I'll give you a couple live dogs that I'm all about. My one fraud is, well, other than Kansas, which we know is a fraud, I don't love Arizona. I mean, I kind of hate Arizona. It's for the same reasons we've been talking. Dan said it earlier. When they run into a team that can grind it out, they just don't. They can't. If they can't control the tempo, they can't win the game, and they can go cold at any moment. And I also think, like, I just look at Arizona, Nevada, and even though Nevada's not known for playing super slow, I think Nevada's good enough, if they get past Dayton, which I think they will, to upset Arizona. I also kind of, like, in one of my brackets, I just had Long Beach State upsetting them, not because Long Beach State is any good, but because of the weird story with the coach, where I believe it's Long Beach State. I hope so, because I put my my whole pick on this. He got fired, and then he agreed to coach through the tournament. They were like, "We'll let you coach the tournament, but you're fired after that." And then he won the tournament, and so now he got an auto bid, and so he's still coaching, and it's just like, that's March Madness. So if you're telling me that Long Beach, I don't care how good they are, what they play, who their players are, like, that's a team that could just upset Arizona just because it's like an incredible storyline, like a coach who can't get fired because he keeps winning. It's so typical of March Madness that I like Long Beach State for that dumb reason.
Well, there's two problems with that. One, this happened in 1995 with Florida International. They went 11-18, won their conference tournament, and their fired coach actually walked into the press conference with his phone number in front of him, wearing a shirt saying, "I need a job." It was Bob Weltlich. Florida International lost that game by 36. And the other problem is Long Beach State is not exactly known for a slow pace. Arizona, 23rd in pace in the country. Long Beach State, 31. This game could be first one to 110 wins, which will be Arizona.
Yeah, and I know that, but I just think, just let me just have the moment. Like, we'll see. In these 15-16s, it's been 3 years in a row we've had that happen. So maybe look at 1-15-16. It
has. And one thing to throw in there: 15 seeds rarely fly alone. Like, I think every time, except for maybe two, that a 15 seed is won, at least two other 1 through 4 seeds have been bounced in the first round.
Yeah. Now, that's really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
So, last thing, I'll just do live dog, then we'll move on. James Madison, just a solid group. Shout out Central Virginia, Dad, James Madison. Solid group. Wisconsin's been on a little bit of a runner, but we've also seen like the Jekyll and Hyde Wisconsin where they absolutely suck. So it's not like they can't lose basketball games. Just eye test, they've been tricky at the free throw line. They're really sketchy. And James Madison, I mean, they're adjusted offense, 56th in the nation, adjusted defense, 79th. That's really good for a 12 seed. They play pretty quick, which Wisconsin, I mean, 71st in tempo, so they're kind of right there. Wisconsin, they can play quick too, but they struggle. They'd rather play a little bit slower than 71. James Madison hits a lot of threes as well. Wisconsin does not guard the three-point line at all. So I really like James Madison there. And because I don't really like Duke either, I can kind of see a Vermont James Madison situation. Now, all of a sudden, I think James Madison's in the Sweet 16. Stranger things have happened, so I kind of like that as well. One of the things that's not strange, though, Dad and Nate and Dan, is my love for Beard Vet Coffee. If you listen every Saturday, you know how much I enjoy Beard Vet Coffee. Had a cup earlier. Dad's got a cup right now because he wakes up so early. You can go to beardvet.com. That's beardvet.com. You get the K-Cups. You can get the fine ground. You get the whole bean. Grind them up right there and then put them in your coffee maker. They also have beard tinctures. Beardvet.com is an incredible place to get some of the best coffee for a reasonable price. Not only that, when you put in the promo code Godzilla, you get 10% off, which basically knocks off any of the shipping concerns, anything like that. And they get it to you super quick. So you don't want to be sitting around wondering where your coffee is going to come. You want that coffee to arrive immediately, because what happens is you order the coffee, you wait for it 3, 4, 5 days. All of a sudden you're at the store. Now you're buying Dunkin' Donuts or Folgers or something else. When you're waiting for your coffee to show up, you don't need that. So when you know you're running a little low, all you need is about 2 days, and BeardVet will get it to you. Beardvet.com, promo code Godzilla. Okay, we got 13 minutes left. That segment went a little long, but it was probably the one I was most excited about. So the way we'll do this is I want to do very quickly, like I don't have any picks right now, like best bets. So we'll do the Final Four stuff in a minute, but just Dan, Nate, and Dad, if you have some, like just your best bets for Thursday and Friday, maybe 2 or 3. We're talking ATS here. So stuff where you're like, okay, or over under. This is by far my favorite pick. And I know a lot of that will dovetail with some of the live dogs you like and stuff like that. Dan, we'll start with you. Then we'll go to Nate. Just a couple best bets that you really like. Or Dan, if you want to talk about the play-in games, that you can do that as well.
Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna talk a little bit about a play-in game. I really like Montana State in this one. I think that Montana State has been here before multiple times, whereas Grambling, first experience ever in the NCAA tournament, and I just don't think that this is going to work out for the Tigers. I think that they're too sloppy with the basketball, and I really like Montana State to come through this and get fed to Purdue in that first game. So, I mean, maybe Montana State pulls off the miracle, which would be hilarious because their former coach, Danny Sprinkle, is sitting in that 8-9 game at Utah State. So if Purdue does blow it again and make me look ridiculous, at least we have an interesting story there. I will look at another 8-9 game. This one I've just put on the site. I like Nebraska. Nebraska has famously never won an NCAA tournament game. They're 0-7, but I think they have the right matchup with Texas A&M because last year Texas A&M ran into Penn State, and the Aggies, the blueprint on how to beat them, they are totally dependent on offensive rebounding and getting to the free throw line. If you make them shoot jumpers, as Penn State did last year, then they don't have an answer. And Nebraska plays defense almost exactly like that Penn State team did last year. Nebraska excels at keeping teams off the free throw line. They just battled Coleman Hawkins in Illinois to almost a draw on the boards. They're not going to have any trouble with A&M's rebounding. The line is only 1 point right now. I really like Nebraska to cover that one.
Nebraska, as Dan said earlier, never won an NCAA tournament game. So maybe they'll get it done this time. Nate, a couple best bets here.
Couple best bets. Well, tonight I like the under in the UVA Colorado State game. I mean, John's already talked about how it's going to be an ugly game, and I think that it will be an ugly game. I mean, Colorado State's pretty comfortable playing a slow-paced defensive battle. I think they will find a willing partner in Virginia. This game is probably a race to 50, so I think anything under 119-ish is probably a good bet there. The other playing game I like for tomorrow is Colorado against Boise State. As a general rule, until the Mountain West starts to win more tournament games from teams that aren't named San Diego State, I'm generally pretty skeptical of them. I think Colorado should take care of business against Boise, and what's kind of just lined is basically a coin flip game. Colorado minus 2.5 right now. I like Drake to upset Washington State on Thursday. And then on Friday, I like Baylor to dominate Colgate. Colgate's a team that's built its profile playing pretty bad teams. They're just kind of like a classic small school bully. They don't do enough to be able to disrupt a team like Baylor. I think Baylor probably just walks over Colgate. I like James Madison to upset Wisconsin on Friday as well. So those are sort of where I'm looking.
That's where Nate's looking now. Dad, I know you got a bunch. Tell us a couple of your picks.
Well, you can find them all on, you can go to GodzillaWins.com, Johnny's Quick Picks. I'm going to give you a free hockey pick tonight on the goodness of my heart, which is up on my site. I love Tampa Bay Lightning in this game against Vegas. They got 25 goals in the last 5 games. Unbelievable. They're like scoring like madmen. I faded them a while. Now I'm on them. I like Tampa Bay tonight in hockey. You can get that on Johnny's Quick Picks. Now, here's my picks on the Thursday. Got a lot of games I like, which is good, right? I love Duquesne plus 8.5. I love the Dukies, my Pittsburgh team over BYU that doesn't play on Sunday. So I'm going to take the 8.5 with Duquesne. These are Thursday games. I love North Carolina State plus 5.5. This is one of the most underrated teams out there. They're very, very tough. They're very, very fast. I'm going to take the 5.5 with NC State over Texas Tech. I love Drake. Let's get to, I think this is on Thursday also. I love Drake minus 1.5. I said earlier they were kind of the upset special team. I like them over the 7th seed. They're the 10th over Washington State, and I'm laying 1.5, and they're the 10th seed over the 7th seed. So I like Drake over Washington State minus 1.5. On Friday, I love 2 games. I'm betting the Blazers, UAB. I'm taking the 7. I think they're going to win the whole game. I talked about that earlier, so no need to go on it. And then my best bet, get this. I agree with Nate 100%. Best bet on this card, the whole thing, Baylor over Colgate. Colgate hasn't beaten anybody. This game, if Baylor doesn't win this game by 35, like there's something the matter with this team. So, I mean, Colgate, you got to be kidding me, right? So I think Baylor minus 14. Nate nailed it. Best bet there, but I got my 5 plays. You can find them on Johnny's Quick Picks on GodzillaWins.com.
You should move to Vegas and just do where you call people randomly and leave voicemails about how if they send you $75, you can unlock all your picks. Like, just being like, I'm gonna throw in a hockey pick just because I'm there for you and I love you. And
30-star bomb lock.
Yeah, like that's just that you're just.
Hey, I won 5 hockey games in a row. I'm on a roll. Dan's my editor. He knows.
Yeah,
I'm on a hockey roll. I won 5.
John's doing a great job on
6
hockey.
in a row.
Although I have to question both that Duquesne pick and the NC State play. The NC State play, I think, has one weird factor: is will the Pittsburgh crowd turn against the Wolfpack because of the fact that the Wolfpack is probably the reason that their team is not in the tournament?
That's a good point. That's a very good. You know what? I haven't thought of that.
That could be a very hostile crowd.
Yeah, look in these tournaments. Sometimes you got to bet. You got to bet the teams with the hot hand, right? They're just hot. This is why
not so much.
Illinois.
Not so much. I really hesitated on Illinois in part because
are they a legitimate
tournament
3 seed?
Illinois,
they are a 3 seed. But the Big Ten tournament champion has flamed out in the first round 2 years running.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So I'll give you a couple, then we'll go to our final 4 picks. Love the under tonight. That means both these teams are going to score 80 for some reason. But you got to love the under in Arizona State, Colorado State. Neither team scores. I like Mississippi State plus 1.5 with Michigan State. I just don't like Michigan State. I mean, their numbers pretty much add up to the same. Michigan State, like a little bit better efficiency wise, but I think they're frauds and they kind of suck. And I don't think that about Mississippi State. I think Mississippi State played with a lot of grit in that SEC tournament. I think they want to be there, and I think they see a path towards a win. So I like that plus 1.5, getting some money there. Nevada as a 10 seed minus 1.5. Okay, well, listen, if you're a 10 seed and you're minus 1.5, there's something wrong there. Vegas isn't baiting us into that. Nevada's a better team than Dayton. Take the 1.5. I also sort of like Kentucky minus 13.5 over Oakland, just because Kentucky's like nonsense. They're so good right now. This is the best scoring team Calipari's ever had. I think they're going to absolutely hang one on Oakland, just because I think Kentucky is probably going to move pretty quick for some of these teams in the tournament. They're really good. The other one I think I like is, like I said, James Madison. I believe that is like 5.5 plus 5.5. I like James Madison there just to upset. I mean, you might as well take him on the money line if you're listening to me. And look, I'm hot in college basketball. I keep going 6-3, 7-3 every Saturday. So I'll throw in my little 2 cents there. Okay, 5:56. So 6:56 if you're on the East Coast. I'm here in Mississippi. So we'll go around the horn here. Just do some
so nice not to have to worry about that Hawaiian time zone anymore.
I know, for real. You're over there on the East Coast now.
Jeez.
Better to be back there. So let's do Final Four picks. Now, I've got like 20 Final Four picks, so I'll just have to pick a couple. Dan, we'll start with you, and we'll go around, and we'll see if Dad puts 3 Big East teams in the Final Four.
That would be interesting. Okay, my Final Four, almost certainly to be wrong in some way, but I'm going to go with Purdue, of course, Houston, Baylor, and Auburn.
Okay.
And I'm going to take Purdue to beat Auburn in the title game.
Purdue to beat Auburn in the title game. Yeah, so we know Dan loves Purdue. And, of course, Auburn. I mean, they're a sexy pick right now. Nate, what do you think?
I think Iowa State coming out of the East region. I like Iowa State. I like Houston, obviously, coming out of the South. In my heart, I want New Mexico to come out of the West or Nevada, but I think realistically, it's probably Arizona, and then Purdue out of the Midwest.
Who is in the championship game?
Iowa State, Houston rematch. Houston avenges the Big 12 title game.
And Nate cashes a 20-1 future. Not
That's
that
right.
that is in any way clouding his judgment. Dad, Final Four.
Well, coming out of the East, I like Iowa State. I think they're going to beat. I don't think UConn gets there. There's just a lot of reasons. They're a very good team, but I like the number 2 seed coming out of there. Iowa State is a very dangerous team, so I like them. Look, I like the Tar Heels, but I tell you, the team that is the most dangerous team in this other bracket is Baylor. I mean, Baylor is very, very tough. They're the 3 seed coming in, so I like Baylor coming out of I guess that would be the West. In the South, even though I think the Cougars are a fraud, that's the easiest bracket. I mean, if any number 2 team was in there, instead they would come out there. So, I mean, who's going to beat them? Texas Tech? No. So I'm going to go with Houston out of the South. And then in the Midwest, okay, I picked Purdue to win this thing the last, 3 years straight. I got burned every time, right? Virginia beats them. This team beats them. The Fairleigh Dickinson throws up 92 threes. At some point, Purdue has got to win one of these things. So I'm going to go with Purdue, and I'm going to go Purdue to win
10
the whole
seconds. Okay, Purdue to win the whole thing. My Final Four, give me Iowa State, give me Baylor. I'll do something crazy. Give me McNeese, go on a little run there. Give me Houston and Baylor in the championship game, and Houston wins it. That is our Godzilla Wins Tuesday March Madness special. Have so much fun this week, y'all. Remember to go to GodzillaWins.com and to listen to our live show every Saturday, 8 to 10 Eastern time. Dad, what is up next on your programming?
It depends on where you are, right? I think it's 7 p.m. Some markets are going to have Mark Levin. Some are going to have Free Talk Live. Either way, Steve Bannon, 6 a.m. tomorrow. I'll be there at 7. See you then.
See you, everyone.
Hey, great show, guys. Awesome. Awesome.
Fun.
Excellent show. Great banter, great picks. It was just great. So much fun. You guys doing a hell of a job. That was
Jack,
awesome.
after all that about UConn being the best team, they don't even make
I only had like 20 seconds, and so I just started throwing teams out there. I mean, I go back and forth between Iowa State and UConn, but I just worry about Auburn. Like, I kind of think Auburn's going to beat UConn, and I don't know if Auburn can get through everything. So I kind of like Iowa State there. I just love the Big 12. I'm like in love with the Big 12 right now. So we'll see. I don't know. It's going to be crazy.
I hope you're also in love with Big 12 baseball. WVU playing at home after getting annihilated, worst loss in a non-conference game in history. They got beat 26-11 by Ohio State on Sunday. Good thing your brother had nothing to do with it. He wasn't.
Yeah.
They were only he threw 9 pitchers. They carried 12. He threw 9 of them. And Joe was saving Joe, I guess. He didn't want to put him in with his score that way, but he'll probably pitch tomorrow night at home against Marshall, so it'll be fun. Thanks, guys.
All right, see you.
Appreciate it. That was fun.